here on this very early time on Wednesday morning, this very, very busy day. I'm Kathleen Spiehart, Executive Director of the Council on Veteran Arts, also known as COCA, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here today, both in person and on Zoom. Thank you so much. We've got an amazing conversation today that's going to be moderated by Kim Cohen from WFSU, and so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kim. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me? Do we need the microphone? Should we get them? I'm just doing a test. Okay, great.
So the comments are on Zoom.
Yeah, so you might.
So if they say we can't hear, then
Get the microphone.
we'll get the mic.
I think we're good.
I'm thrilled to be here because as an art and art history major myself, which I told Randy just a minute ago, the arts are really important to me. And I can't think of anything that inspires the human spirit more than the arts. So having a day, having Randy here to really do this deep dive into looking at the arts and figuring out how they can be measured as an economic engine for our community is so exciting. So I want to introduce Randy. He is the Vice President of the Americans for the Arts. It's a national advocacy for the arts. And he's been there since 1991. So he has a lot of experience. He's been everywhere in this country, so many towns. He's a noted expert in the field of arts funding, research, and using the arts to address community development issues. What I also found very interesting is that you have worked with the White House and with the U.S. Department of Justice to look at the ways that the arts can help at-risk youth, which is something we talk a lot about in this community. So I love that idea too. I'd love to know more about that. So he's here as part of the Readiness and Capacity Building Tour. So COCA, as most of you know, is in the process of doing these surveys. It's part of the Arts and Economic Prosperity 6, or shorthand AEP 6. 6 meaning this is the sixth time this national survey is being done to figure out how the arts can benefit communities. So this current round started in May of 2022, and it will go through April of 2023. And COCA is collected so far 400 surveys, but they want to collect 800 surveys. So all of us are tasked with getting those 400 additional surveys, because the more surveys we get, the more Randy can determine how the arts and culture of this community benefits our bottom line in our town. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
I have one last thing I have to say about him. He told me last night that his wife calls him an art preacher. And I love that. I love that. So and not only is he an art preacher, he's an evangelical art preacher, because this man has the spirit. I got to where we were going to meet last night, and I saw this man literally almost running down the road, and it was you heading towards the social. And you just have such a passion for what you do.
Just letting us out.
So thank you so much. So I want to ask you to start, Randy, by telling us, give us a sense of how much arts and culture impact our national economy.
Sure. Well, first let me just say thank you. It's great to be with you all. Thank you, COCA, for having me. Kim, Dailey, great arts champion, great arts leader, broadcaster right here. So I really feel I'm in a room full of great arts leaders. And, the arts, we all love the arts, right? They inspire us and they engage us, and they create the communities that we want to live in and work in. And, a healthy individual has creativity and arts and culture in their lives. A healthy community has arts and culture in their lives. But, I want to change the conversation a little bit about that when we talk about arts and the economy. So we're going to stipulate for a moment all the wonderful, soulful things that the arts do for us as individuals and a community, and think about the arts as an industry. And so there's a couple sort of going from the general to the specific here. The U.S. Department of Commerce, every year, the Bureau of Economic Analysis does this huge analysis of arts and culture in this country. They basically, take the whole economy and put it on a table and pull out all the arts dollars. And what they find is that nationally, arts and culture, $868 billion industry, billion with a B, much bigger than anybody ever expects. But then they also narrow it down into state levels as well. So I can tell you here in Florida, arts and culture, that's, commercial design, you've got the incredible art schools here and the nonprofit organizations and individual artists, $32.5 billion industry, 2.9% of gross state product, 2.9% of Florida's economy is arts and culture. And that supports 233 jobs, 1,000 jobs across the state. So it's a huge industry. But then sort of narrowing the base even still, right, from the general to the specific, this arts and economic prosperity study that we're doing, it's number 6. We do it about every 5 years. And this one, we really hone in just on Tampa and Leon County, which are part of 395 communities as part of this national study. We're in all 50 states, communities as small as 1,400 people, as big as 4 million. You know what? If we're in a small rural community or a large city or a suburban neighborhood, the arts are happening there. There's a measurable economic impact. And so in 2017, Leon County was part of our last study. And I can tell you, $202 million industry right here. And that's just nonprofit arts and culture and our municipal organizations, the city and, community organizations. That doesn't include the motion picture industry or our commercial galleries. It's really just, when the city, provides that great art support and the county provides that great art support, it's sort of going to that nonprofit arts world, right? And so this is a chance to say, all right, we get cultural benefits, but what's the ROI on the rest of that, investment in terms of benefits? And so that 202 million supports 7,161 jobs right here in the county and generates $26 million in local and state government revenue. And we'll talk more about tourism and all that stuff, the benefits there. But arts are an industry, and they're a much bigger industry than anybody ever expects.
So the reason to measure it, was that the incentive to start doing the survey to really put a dollar value?
Yeah, because in order to make the arts accessible to everybody in a community, cost is one of the factors, right? So how do you keep the arts accessible and affordable? And to do that, because it's expensive, we've gone to New York, right? And, you buy a ticket on Broadway, it's a couple $100. That's not how much it costs to produce the show. But who can afford to do that downtown or in the communities all the time? So, when our city or our county leaders provide investment in the arts, and when our private sector, when we as individuals contribute to the arts, that's helping our arts and culture organizations make the arts more accessible to the community. It lowers the cost, right? So then how do we make that case for that investment? The fact is, I think everybody loves the arts and we all believe they, improve our communities wonderfully. But, our decision makers have a lot of priorities and a lot of competing priorities. And
do you find that to be the case?
Yeah. Maybe one or two priorities. And I'm sure, you're thinking all the times jobs, right? That's a priority. So with these economic impact studies, now we can connect our arts and culture product to jobs, which is elected leaders, 3 priorities so often, jobs, jobs, and jobs, right? Mm-hmm. So, does that resonate with you?
It does. I would, first of all, good morning, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Good to see you.
Mayor Dailey, for taking the time. I know you have a busy day. You've got a very big meeting ahead of you. So
this is great.
being here.
This is fantastic. Hey, and welcome to Tallahassee. You're gonna realize real quick that there are a lot of people, a heck of a lot more knowledgeable than I am, that are here. Let me take a second to recognize Commissioner Dozier that serves on COCA, representing the county. But for us, it is not just about jobs, but I think everybody would agree. It's also about quality of life. Mm-hmm. And we are nationally known for our quality of life, everything from the services that we provide to the arts, the culture, our rich history, our natural beauty. So yes, while you have the economic impact that's so very important, yes, the job creation, it's also about the quality of life here in Tallahassee that we take real seriously. And I know you find that in every other community. By the way, I don't know if you know this, Randy's also a North Florida guy. He was born in Milton, Florida. I just figured it out.
Yeah, that's native.
Well, native. Great to have you back in the
Thank you. It's great to be up here.
So, we're going to be celebrating our bicentennial in
24.
24. So how can we incorporate this art and culture mindsets really robustly into that opportunity with celebrating our bicentennial. How can we do that?
Well, the great
We're
thing.
looking to you for an
Yeah, I thought you knew the answer. But the great thing about the arts is, we can find it in every part of our lives. And there's a lot of ways to do it. I tell you, I do every couple of years a big national public opinion survey, and I ask people, how do you engage in the arts? And there's sort of the traditional, our museums or performing arts organizations, like some of the great festivals here in town. But then I also ask folks, where else do you find it? And we hear things like at the airport, in the library, in the schools, in the hospitals, public art in the built environment, and so there's room for arts and culture, across the community, and that can be celebrated in every way. And every municipality I go to, you've got citizen advisory boards and commissions on roads and signs, airports, and all that stuff, right? Well, you could put artists and arts organization representation on all of those and really challenge everybody. All right, what we're thinking about and how can we infuse the arts in that? Water treatment plants. I mean, the dump. You can find, you look around communities across the country, arts and culture just can make everything better.
Right. Absolutely. Let me give you a great example. Art in the Box, right? Dan is one of our featured artists. It was a great public-private partnership through KCCI, the Night Creative Arts Initiative here in Tallahassee, where we take public infrastructure, literally electrical boxes that are in corners all across the county. We bring in local artists. We fundraise and, to make sure that we pay and everything. And then we beautifully design it and allow the artist just to have full range on what's on it. So when you're walking around town, you'll be amazed to see all of our electrical infrastructure on the ground is actually in the process of either has been painted or is in the process of being painted, which is really cool.
I love that. Yeah. Really, how do you make the arts unavoidable?
Sure.
Because it creates community pride, it unifies, and it also helps us feel more creative in the presence of the art. And I'll tell you, we were, talking with a lot of business leaders and meeting with a lot of business leaders and great appreciation, for the arts with the business community here. So there's a report by the Conference Board, which is the National Organization for Big Business in this country. And their research shows creativity is now among the top 5 applied skills that business leaders are looking for. It's even leapfrog the 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, right? So now, of course, you got to be able to read, write, and do math. Take some creativity and apply that to your scientific, your coding, your agriculture knowledge. Those are the high-paying, innovative jobs, that we're looking for in our communities. 72% of business leaders say creativity is of high importance in hiring. 85% of those folks say can't find the people we're looking for. Yeah. And the biggest indicators of creativity: starting your own business, entrepreneurial activity, and study of the arts. Yep. Yeah. So, and there's so many great examples and Science Center here. So in attracting these creative workers, because that's what we're trying to do, right? Attract these, because creativity drives innovation. Innovation is how you prosper in a global economy, right? And so these creative workers are saying, look, I'm creative in the workplace. I'm a creative person. I want arts and culture, in my community. I want arts maker spaces. And so, I'll tell you, as a recruiter, when you're looking around and you're walking through the community and you see art, you see the utility boxes painted, and you walk through the murals, so many incredible murals, and you see the big arts performing, the amphitheater out there. You think, oh, this is really great, creative, community. So it really benefits us in a lot of ways.
Which you raise a really good point. So how do we infuse that mindset in starting with our youngest people, our children in our schools? That our schools are places that are allowing creativity as well. And I know that that's a big challenge, is to keep arts funding in our elementary and our public schools, because it's expensive, and the pressure of what we have to get into their brains by the time they graduate, but we've got to start young. This fostering this creative mindset.
Yeah, I think making sure the arts are central to a child's education is honestly just one of the most important things we can do, as advocates, champions for the arts, but not just the arts, helping communities, helping people, a future, a shared future, right? And the research is so powerful that when a young person has the arts as part of their education, better grades, better test scores, lower dropout rates, even better attitudes about community service, right? We always think about community engagement, we're talking about our kids, getting kids off the machines and their devices and everything, right? Getting involved in a community. And so the arts create all of that. And what's fascinating is the research shows that that cuts across all socioeconomic strata. So it's not an urban phenomenon, it's not an affluence phenomenon. Every child stands to benefit. So now what we have found is that in low-income communities and Title I schools, those schools, the kids in those schools are less likely to have an arts education. So, that's something we really have to pay attention to, is equity there. And in fact, there's the UCLA researcher, James Catterall, who's done all this, research and longitudinal research. And he actually tracked, this cohort of people, young people he studied into their 20s as, young adults. And even then, you could notice the data showed the arts involved kids more likely to have some college going, more likely to be in career-oriented jobs. And so, we're really talking about our future here.
Which gets me to the point that this current study, the sixth study, has a BIPOC component to it, to look at how communities can be inclusive and encouraging that diversity. So how do you look at that? How do you measure that when you're doing this survey?
Yeah, so one of the things I've noticed, is, just try to be responsible researchers. And, we do this study every 5 years, and in between you get a ballot and you break it to pieces. And what can we do and how can we make it better? And we've observed an underrepresentation of organizations of color, Black, Indigenous, people of color organizations. And so change our methodology, we added to our staffing, and, we really, and so each community is required now to collect surveys from organizations. So we're really having everybody dig deep into the community to find those BIPOC organizations, to make sure we hear from them and be sure we're gathering audience surveys from those organizations that have a mission of serving, those communities or advancing, those art forms. So that's just going to be a very different approach. We're also taking much more of a social impact look. So is this, a pillar of our community, this organization? And, are we here because we want to make sure it's available for the next generation and pride in the community and all those pieces as well? So we're really looking much more dynamically. And so in a year from now, when I come back and we all have, sit up here and talk about the next, findings, we'll say, here's what's happening in Tallahassee and Leon County. And then will be a whole additional analysis on, here's the impact of those BIPOC organizations. Because what I've heard from, colleagues in the field for a long time, it's like, look, we're part of this study. We're happy to be, we get advocacy, we get the importance of the arts, but you got to know that when the funding comes around, often organizations that look like mine, organizations of color, are coming up shorter on the investment, on the grants. So, this is a real opportunity to change that conversation and change that approach.
Yeah, definitely. So, Mayor Dailey, you grew up in Tallahassee.
Right. You've
got deep roots in this community. How have you seen the arts and change and grow in your time growing up there?
It is completely evolved in Tallahassee. And I think that's one of the things that makes Tallahassee so special. I mean, one of the things that we are so proud of is the fact that we are named one of the top 10 communities in the Southeast United States to live, work, and play. We're also named one of the top 10 university communities in the Southeast United States. I can remember growing up, the major festivals was family affair. We all went, and it draws people from all over the region. But to watch, for instance, the music scene take off, to watch the performing arts scene take off, to watch the day-to-day activity here in Tallahassee take off, and really see the community rally behind the arts. Now, we've got a lot of work to do, don't get me wrong. I'm sure every community would say the same thing. But it's just exciting to see where we have come from and where we are going. And Tim nailed it. We've got an incredible opportunity in 2024 for our bicentennial to really shine a light on our community and to be able to really celebrate who we are. Also, to touch on one thing that you mentioned earlier, it goes back to the quality of life. It's fascinating to see, especially the students that are coming out of universities now, that are picking a place to live first and then finding their job. Okay. So you want to have that municipality, you want to have that community. That's great. It's got the good music scene, it's got the great art scene that has things to do. And on top of that, recognized for natural beauty and everything. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're seeing Tallahassee shine nationally, is because of our quality of life and how serious we take the arts and how much we try to embed it on a day-to-day basis as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely a national trend. It's great to hear. Yeah, Tallahassee is such a great arts city and region. Yeah, because I know when I came up, when I got out of college, and I'd go to whoever happened, right? I moved, around. And now, our new and emerging professionals are picking the communities they want to move in and figuring, I'll get there and I'll make it work. I've got skills that cut across a couple of industries. I can, contract worker. I could go into business for myself. I can telecommute.
That's right.
I can live here and I can still keep my job in Atlanta or something, right? So, and in the economy, 70% of the nation's economy is individual, it's household spending, right? It's personal spending. And so you want people to come into your community. That's right? Because, that's what drives the economy.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then we'll open it up for other people. But I want to ask you, what's an art experience that you've recently had that has stuck with you? Randy, I'll start with you.
Boy. Pressure. I'll tell you, one of the things that really is, so during the pandemic, I started to, I watched a lot of organizations made their product virtual, right? Because, most of the performing, if you had live events, most of them closed, for months or years. And only now, some are just starting to open up around the country. So effectively, virtually all of them, 99% have closed their doors. And so, that was really interesting, experiencing the arts differently sort of through my TV. But I, like many people during the pandemic, sort of took up my own art and creation. Nice. And so what I did, so like ukulele sales, right? Check Amazon. I didn't become a uke guy. Like looking at creative very easy, you're right. But I took up knitting. So yeah, and my aunts and grandmother and stuff, and I was loving clickety clack and all that stuff. And I thought about I want to learn to knit someday. And I got like a few YouTubes and watched it, and then a really generous neighbor's like, all right, let's finish the job here. And it's just a satisfying creative thing. Now, I'm not great. I make like the world's longest scarf. So there you go. I'm like a runaway locomotive, and then it's just there's giraffes lined up out front because I can wrap around the neck, with these scarves. So personal creation. And while the arts is sort of an industry, we're one of the most hardest hit part of the Bureau of Economic Analysis.
Right.
Worse than airlines, worse than tourism. This personal creation actually really spiked, and because people were looking to do things. Here's an interesting thing. We at the University of Florida and University College London were involved in these research studies on arts and mental health during the pandemic.
Right.
And tens of thousands of people, and if any of you are watching, thank you for doing these weekly surveys about your activities and how you were feeling. What we found is a little arts activity every day, and creative, making, watching, it could be gardening or culinary, making food, right? So big umbrella stuff. But we saw decreases in depression, decreases in anxiety, increases in life satisfaction. Because during the pandemic, mental health issues tripled in this country. Loneliness, isolation. So even there, right at home, right?
Yeah.
The arts providing
Love
a
it.
personal
I
kind of
love that
satisfaction.
story. That's so, my son took up embroidery.
Yeah, perfect.
He started embroidering his t-shirts. I'm like, what?
Wow.
Where'd you learn to do that? I was so impressed. He's like, he got into sunflower. It's very interesting.
Nice.
Mayor Dailey, any?
Yeah, I got about three actually. I'll share really quick, kind of along the same lines. So my boys are in 8th grade, 6th grade during the pandemic. They were a lot younger, and so our project was we built a homemade go-kart. Cannibalize the wheelbarrow and the lawnmower and everything. It's like that, trying to be creative. In this particular instance, it was woodworking, and we had a lot of fun. It was a good time. So I don't know if any of y'all had the opportunity to come out. Asian Festival was just rocking it this year. It was incredible. It's one of our largest festivals that we have. We just hosted it a couple of weeks ago at our park. So if y'all can imagine, I'm coming over the hill. You got Asian Fest set up with literally, 10,000 people running around. It's a beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky. The weather's perfect. And then all of a sudden at this park, we also have a nationally recognized disc golf course. Mm-hmm. So then it's the creation and the combining of space and activities. And you got the disc golfers out that are playing while Asian Fest is going on, and they take a break and they walk over and check out one of the performances and eat some food. And then you have the playground right over as well, and you have the mountain biking trails, and it's just bringing people together, and it's the creation of civic space, at least for a weekend during this festival. Yeah. And it was just amazing, and the talent that we have in this community celebrating the Asian cultures was just second to none. And it was just, I had one of those moments, kind of cheesy moments, when you're standing on the hill looking around going, this is what it's all about. This is absolutely fantastic. And then I'll close on a note. Kim, I think I was telling you, we just had Earth, Wind, and Fire in Tallahassee. Oh, yeah. On September 21st. Thank you very much. But nonetheless, so that morning, I was having a briefing at a restaurant called Yet, and I was sitting there with my team. And Courtney, you remember this. There was two young ladies that were having breakfast right next to us. And, I'm always, you figure out real quick if they're from town or not. Went over, introduced myself, and welcome to Tallahassee. Hey, what brings you to town? We flew in from New Jersey for the Earth, Wind, and Fire concert. Childhood best friends literally flew in from New Jersey on a girls' weekend to come to the concert. And I was thinking, wow, that is just absolutely amazing to think of. And we know this happens, but to have a real life example, and they're like, we love your town. Oh my gosh, we went out last night. We had a blast. We're eating here during the day. We're going to go do this and that. And, looking forward to the weekend. But literally, they flew in from Jersey just to come to the Earth, Wind, and Fire concert. So, yeah.
I'm from New Jersey. So
I did not.
I love that. That's very hard.
There you go. Yeah.
When I got married to a Floridian, and that meant that I was going to move to Tallahassee because he was not going to move to LA because he's an ornithologist, and I don't think he even thought there were birds in LA. So I moved into Tallahassee, and all of my friends prior to living in LA lived in New York City. So my friends in New York and LA think I've lost my mind. Where, I can't even pronounce where you're moving to. But one by one over the years, as they've come to visit me, they have all said, you made the best decision. This is such an amazing region to live in. They all want to come here now. My brother comes down every winter. They all went from thinking I've lost my mind to, what an incredible choice like this. So Tallahassee's a place that really gets under your skin. Right. And we were talking last night, it has this boomerang effect. You think you're going to leave, but you end up coming back because it offers a quality of life that's very unique, and the arts and culture are really an important part.
Absolutely. On that note, a couple times a year, I meet with the Canadian Consulate General, who is based out of Miami, but just loves Tallahassee. And we're talking about ways how we can increase our advertisement all over Canada. That, during your Canadian winter, come on down to Tallahassee. We're close enough to the coast that if you want the coastal activities, please come. But the Consulate General recognizes our quality of life, arts and culture. We have a lot of great festivals in the spring. It's a beautiful time to come. And so we are working on this partnership as we move forward from the tourism standpoint as well.
Well, and that's those such great stories. And once again, the data underscore those benefits. So that last Arts and Economic Prosperity 5 study, and we're updating it right now. In that last study, 2.8 million attendees to the organizations that responded to our survey, 16% of them from outside the county, outside Leon County. So, and then within that group, 27% of those non-local attendees had an overnight expense.
Sure.
So let me tell you a little bit about the event-related spending. The typical attendee to an arts event, any arts event, a festival, and a performance, museum exhibit, we interview over 800 of them just right here in town. Spends $36 per person per event, not including the cost of admission on parking and dinner and maybe dessert or drinks after the show. And, when the kids are small, double the cost leaving on babysitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all that economic activity just related to that arts event.
Yeah.
And then those non-local attendees spend $66 per person per event. And if you put that overnight in there, that head in the bed,
Right.
$168 per person per event. So the arts are, and here's the other thing. We asked those non-local attendees, why are you here? But we're glad you're here. Thank you for coming. But are you here on business? Are you here visiting friends and family? 79% said we came specifically for this arts event. That's right. So thank you for your $300,000 investment in the arts most recently, because you're investing not just in the quality of life, but in an industry that's drawing people to the community. Those people are spending money. Here's another thing. We asked the local folks, what if this arts event wasn't taking place? Just stay home, do something else, watch Netflix. Nearly half of them said we go to a different community to attend a similar kind of arts event. So arts spending is a discretionary expense, right? You can spend it here or there, or not at all. But what it shows is that the arts are also keeping our neighbors and their hard-won discretionary dollars right here in town. Going to our local merchants, our local restaurants, local retail. So it's a real tourism and economic development drive as well.
Well, and that's one of the reasons actually why, and I know we got to get to the question, that's why the city commission made the move to additionally provide $300,000, because the flip side of that is the challenge, especially in the state of Florida. Our COCA funding that comes from the sales tax has a requirement for heads and beds, which is great for the festivals and the larger events. But when we come to talk about supporting our local artists that are having incredible events that we locals love, but it might not be bringing the people in out of town per se, it becomes a large hurdle. And that's one of the reasons, if not the main reason, why we moved forward with that 300,000 was to support the local artists as well and what's going on in town. So it's a holistic approach to the arts.
That's good, because we got to invest in the product.
That's right.
And yes, many of the art in our artists, their work, helps drive tourism and put heads in beds. But even locally, it's putting cheeks and seats and derriers and cafe chairs, and but you got it all. I'm stealing they're all yours.
See if anyone has a question.
Cafe chairs. Love it.
Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, first off, secondly, gratitude for your funding, so thanks for reading that last month. But so two-parter real quick, I know we got a little bit of time, but on a state level, how do we get the film incentives to be brought back to Florida? Because that's been a big hindrance to get people out of the state to film films that show Florida background and stuff like that. So that's a big thing to try and incentivize people to come film there and add to the economy when you're filming as well. And then how do we keep the arts relevant year round to help, like, when it's not just local politics, keep it top of mind to help people know, like, that's what there's an option to do as well.
So the first part of the question was incentives to attract the film industry. A lot of states and now, locally as well, provide incentives for film production. Are there spaces where folks can work? Is it an arts, is it an industry friendly approach? Because, when a film comes down, it's like, okay, Mr. Mayor, we got to close the streets. We're going to need, all these kinds of things. So I mean, so that's one of the things. How easy is it going to be to work there? Are there incentives? Usually, some kind of tax breaks or those kind of things. So that's what we see a lot of states doing, especially. Are there, if you look at like some of the big old, warehouse areas or something like that, is there that kind of, are those kind of spaces to do the work? So, yeah, there's a lot, to that conversation, but I think, and can we get there? Yeah, obviously, right? You got big highways, you got an airport here and all that stuff. So, there's no reason, and I don't really know a lot of the particulars, about here locally, but there's no reason like a city like Tallahassee, its size, its geographic and, diversity in terms of hills, mountains, and rivers, and water, and urban, and all that stuff. That it couldn't work. Sure. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
You mentioned some data on BIPOC art organizations. Where can we find that?
So we're working with COCA right now gathering that information. So the question was, where is the data that's going to be available? So in the data collection process, that study and all the findings will be released in a year. Some of the other things we're doing is, benchmarking, the organizational spending, as well as identifying arts organizations that are led by BIPOC leaders. So we're gathering now, and everything will be available and transparent. In it's about a year away though. So.
And it'll be on your website.
Yeah, COCA website, Americans for the Arts website. We publish the reports, all the detailed findings.
Go ahead, you have a problem.
Is that referring to the data you mentioned specifically about how it changes the trajectory of youth in BIPOC communities?
Oh, okay. So the youth arts programs for at-risk.
Right, because you mentioned the dropout rate.
Right.
Ratings and
Yeah. So on our website, and happy to connect with COCA, or I'll just give everybody my email. Email is rcohen, RCOHEN at artsusa.org, ARTSUSA.org. And I can make all that research available to everyone as well. So the arts education data are really powerful. There is a lot of additional research and work about creative youth development and arts programs on at-risk youth. I consider any kid with a school locker an at-risk youth, so it's not like some urban phenomenon or something like that, right? So, but the research, and we work with the U.S. Department of Justice, the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, OJJDP, to do really in-depth controlled evaluations on these programs. What we found is that young people, in school, after school, involved in the arts, basically exhibited more pro-social behavior, more improved communication skills with peers and adults, better attitudes about school, less criminal involvement.
Obviously, the mental health factor too. Mental health is such a challenge for young people.
Yeah, that's a big one. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of those benefits. Absolutely, we're seeing as well as physical health. So
we have time, Elizabeth.
Two, sorry. So with all of this research we've done, what communities results just blew you away last time we did the survey? Where you thought, oh my gosh, they are making incredible gains. And then secondly, arts is such a big term. What area have you seen making most growth since you started surveying? I mean, if there's something like museums or festivals or concerts where it's just flowing through.
So communities that have sort of surprised me or amazed me. Every community's economy and all that stuff are pretty unique. The great thing is we do it every 5 years. We're on the 6th one now. Is to look at the trends over time, and to look at growth in the industry and community engagement in the industry. And so, maybe more organizations, more attendance, that type of thing. But, it also depends what a community's goals are as well. But what I love to see is greater greater community involvement, from the local folks especially. So, the tourism, the economic development numbers are huge, super important. But I love it when the whole pie grows, over time, because because everybody benefits, just because this is a great tourism town. We're not only talking about, tourists, everybody who lives here totally benefits from that. When we use a portion of the hotel occupancy tax, to fund the arts, that's benefiting, us as locals as well, right? I mean, one city that passed theirs by referendum, the slogan was, "You never paid it, and you never will." And so, the way to increase support for the arts is add 1 or 2%, onto that. I find actually the hotel occupancy rates are pretty low here compared to a lot of cities. And you've got all these people in town for business. Stay capital. People, football games, people are coming, and there's one way that we see a lot of cities going, saying, we're going to invest in this product to keep people coming, but also just to improve it from the inside out. So some ways to do both, right?
And second part to your question, Elizabeth, is there a particular art area that you see brings the biggest benefit? Is there one over the other? I know they're all your favorites.
Yeah, right. They're all my favorites. It's all just different experiences and that type of thing. People spend differently. When I take the kids when they were small to a Saturday theater thing, a couple of Happy Meals and ice cream, and that was the event-related spending, right? I take my wife out, I better do better than a Happy Meal. So, what I see rather is there a diverse set, of opportunities? Is I think the way to actually think about the conversation. Is there a museum? Are there performing arts? Are there great festivals? Are there opportunities for the kids? Are there programs, that work with older, our older citizens and everything else? So that I think is sort of the better measure of community impact. Because it is a community impact and it's also an economic impact.
Well, we have 2 minutes before you can speak. So who has a question that didn't get answered? Go ahead.
I'm very interested in, a lot of industries get impacted by the least famine cycle in Tallahassee. Students and families are not here during summer, for example. How have you seen other communities improve the resiliency of their art, whether it's artists or art industries, maybe policy?
Well, you talked about, so the question was, in the off seasons or shoulder seasons, when a lot of the students leave or, that's a great time to have all the do festivals as well, right? Because it's bringing people to the community. Let's see. So that's a big one, what else? I guess that's what's coming to mind, right? There's things that bring people downtown. We're talking like bring some chalk artists in, to sort of close the street and do all that kind of work, and that still gets folks to come in. It's not a giant. It's not like a giant new thing. You can create cultural opportunities.
I know what we can do. We can have Be My Neighbor Day in the summer. And people have people.
Let's do it.
And so many of those people then went to, because the way we had it, all our cultural spaces had events going on. Museum of Florida History, the library. Some of the people said they'd never been into the Museum of Florida History, really attended that day. So, it's like getting people to come. Elizabeth, get them to come downtown and see the riches there. And then there's great restaurants and it all snowballs.
Yeah.
Kim's got a direct line to being a Tiger.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a big draw.
Big draw.
Yeah.
A very certain age.
Yeah, music on every corner. You can create. You can create a lot of content and experiences for people. During the school year or outside the school year. So.
Well, this has been a great conversation. We so appreciate you being in our community and seeing what we have to offer and giving us great guidance and the survey, of course. Mayor, thank you for taking the time to make this part of your agenda of the day. And thank you all for coming. And I know all of you are big arts and culture supporters, so thank you for that. We do this collectively. And Kathleen, of course, to you. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Mayor Dailey, Randy Cohen, Kim Kelly. Your support in this conversation was just fantastic. Thanks to everybody that joined us on Zoom today, and especially to you in person. We do have some refreshments in the back still, so feel free to. We'll be hanging around for a little bit. Mayor Dailey has to go, but the rest of us will be hanging around a little bit. So feel free to help yourself and have a chat. Thanks again, and we'll see you at an arts event.
All right.
Yeah.